Hello, hey you ting. Welcome back to week 5 of Unpicked. We are whizzing through the season, halfway through, and it's your favourite: reduce, reuse, recycle. But before we go any further with that, Ting, how are you? How's your summer holidays going?
Yeah, not bad, thank you.
Uh,
Still taking
oh,
advantage of all this free time.
Absolutely. And I know it's results week as well, this week and next week. So fingers crossed for you all. You get something, they all get what they want.
Let's hope so.
And enjoy the rest of your holidays too. It's cracking weather. You've been loving it, have you?
Well, I don't do too well in the heat, so today was a bit much, but the rest of the time it was fine.
I am still sweating it. Yeah, what do we have? 29 degrees. Did you get to 30 where you were?
At one point, it was said it was 32 in the car when I was driving, and it didn't go down. So,
Yeah, too hot to be in the sewing room. We need to be, well, probably in a dark room lying down. But anyway, just before we go on to the show, I just want to do a quick plug for those who may not be aware with our masterclasses. You may watch our sister show, All Gathered Up with Carol Alayne, the amazing master tailor couturier. Well, because we're obviously in the summer now with Sewing Bee, normally we're way in the spring, it meant that Carol couldn't do as many shows as we wanted. But she still is back doing All Gathered Up, but with a slight twist. And that twist is where you get to join in with a masterclass with her based on the skills of episodes of the Sewing Bee. And the first one is this Friday on the 15th. And with my pen, this should work. It's 7 p.m. British summertime. And it's free, everybody. I know, she's still doing them free. And it's based on episodes 1, 2, and 3. And I'm a participant ting, so I'm sewing. But I know, but you don't have to be a participant. In fact, we've got the participants for the 15th, but you can watch. You can watch, you can see how things are done, and we are covering stuff that came up in episodes 1, 2, and 3 of the Sewing Bee this year. So we're going to be looking at how to do a clean neckline, setting up parallel bow ties. Can you remember the bow tie one? That was from, I think, week 1, wasn't it?
yeah.
And how to turn a clean collar. And I've done my homework. I've had to print out all my pattern pieces. But if you want to, you can sign up for free. You can sign up for any of them, but the sign-ups don't happen until just before. So you can only sign up for the 15th at the moment, but it's free. If you want to find out more and to learn more and to ask questions, get some pick Carol's experience of many years as a tailor, you can do. That might be of some interest to you. Obviously,
Oh,
you got writing on your head, Ting.
there
Obviously,
we
you
go.
don't need that, Ting, because you're a master. So
Oh no, I don't need that because I'm not sewing collars. I can tell you that.
right, let's have a quick look at last week of our zip round career, wasn't it? Got some great comments, mostly about slippers, because we got to week 4, and as Elise says, it's very surreal. Only one slipper thrown so far. I await a slipper throwing marathon next week. I think she knew it was reduce, reuse, recycle week. It is interesting, isn't it, T? I know we laugh, but in essence, that's a good thing because the program
Yeah.
obviously is better. But I know our viewers love it when you get frustrated and you start flinging them.
They might see a little of that this week, maybe.
Okay, let's go on for another one. Who have we got here? We've got Nikki says, I enjoyed this episode and thought the guest judge was great. I agree they should have parked Patrick and Esme and let him get on with it. And if you jump down to the end there, it says, get your slippers at the ready, Ting, for Reduce, Reuse, Recycle Week. What ridiculous challenges will they have this year? Were they ridiculous, Ting? A quick little thing? Maybe. All right. Keep watching, everyone. Keep watching. And then we have, who have we got next? Charlotte. An interesting week. Nice to see fashion from around the world. I did think that, bearing in mind the collars on most of the made-to-measures look very Oh, is that the one? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. It was the end comment that I liked about Charlotte's. She said, but I threw a slipper at 3 hours 15. Come on, Great British Sewing Bee, give them a chance to complete, which Patrick said he wanted an impeccably finished garment. That's a very good point, actually, isn't it, Ting?
Well, yeah, and I mean that's when the slippers start to come out, isn't it? When especially if they're, I mean, obviously you want any challenge to have an impeccably finished garment, but to actually say that when it's a week when they were confronted by things they've never made before, and then you take at least 15 minutes off a challenge,
Yeah.
maybe 45, because 4 hours might have been more.
Yeah.
Especially like I said, they've never done it before, so.
And it was actually quite funny because Sarah said, and I'm surprised this got past the editors. Sarah said in her little blurb, didn't she? And what better? I can't remember how she worded it, but and do you want something with sewing with ridiculously short time challenge or something? Didn't she say? I thought, oh, yep. So there's a bit of we know what's going on there, and then. Oh no, that was Elise.
No,
Where are
that
we
was
going?
it.
Oh, I'm going down. I'm going the wrong way, aren't I?
You're
I need
going
to
backwards.
go. I need to go up. And then an interesting one from Susan. Actually, really important. She says, "Thanks for a great show." That's very kind. She says, regarding fabric shops, I drive 2 hours to go to an independent fabric shop. I love being able to touch the fabric and see the drape. The people there are wonderful. I'd like to give a shout out to the Confident Stitch in Missoula, Montana. Ting, we're worldwide.
But it raises the point we said last week about fabric shops. I don't do as much sewing now because there's not the fabric shops around here. If I want to go to a fabric shop, I've either got to drive over to Bury, which is about 40 miles, or I go down to Tiptree, which again is about 40 miles down that way. So you're talking about an 80-mile round trip, and you could still get there and not find what you want. So when you find that fabric shop that can supply you, then you will drive, in this case, 2 hours.
Yeah. And it's so important because we used to have that lovely one in Felixstowe, didn't we? Where we would go to get the pantomime costumes, and we'd have a whale of a time there. And it's so important to support those shops because and I know some people moan, oh, they're so expensive. Well, that's the wonders of having a bricks and mortar shop, isn't it? Their prices will be different. And I think we've just got to suck that up, but still shop there, because if we don't, they will go, won't they?
Oh, yeah, but we're living in a world where the price of everything has gone up everywhere. And, fabric is no different, whether you're talking about cotton, polycotton, rayon, nylon, whatever, everything has gone up. And, at one time, making your own clothes was something that was still relatively cheap to do because you could pick up some nice yardage. But, prices have gone up everywhere, whether that's down to Trump's tariffs or whatever. It is everywhere is more expensive, which is why you've got to cherish those shops and keep supporting them, or otherwise you lose them all. Yeah.
Well, and I know you can go to certain shops and buy like a suit or a dress for 15 quid, which is balmy, isn't it, really, when you think about it? And that's where we have to make those considered decisions, right? Not going there. But I know it's we all have different price points, don't we? So I know it's not always very easy to do. But anyway, so who have we lost and who is left? We said goodbye to Novello last week. So there are our 8 sewers. And I have to say, Tig, even at the beginning, we were like marveling at how good all 12 were. At this stage, I actually don't mind who are the last 3. I love them all. Is that unheard of? Have we ever had this before at this stage?
I don't know whether we've perhaps had it at this stage. I know sometimes we get down to maybe 5 that you start to then go, well, actually, I don't mind. But, this week, even barring any issues I might have with certain challenges, all of them, when it got to that final made to measure, I was like, I don't know how they're going to do this. I really don't, because there was a few errors or bits and pieces, but there was nothing fundamentally wrong with any of what
No.
anyone had produced. And it was one of those weeks where I'm like, well, I'm glad I'm actually not the one choosing who goes home.
I was talking at work with the ladies, and I was trying to go who my favourite three is, and I went like Kaz, Dan, Gaynor, then I went Dan, Gaynor, Orla, then I went Stuart, Kaz, Dan. I kept coming up with every different possibility. I couldn't choose. They are just great. So 8. And this is where we can start to perhaps go into a little bit more detail over the rounds. Certainly when it comes to the made to measure, we will go through all 8. So the pattern challenge, remember, it's reduce, reuse, recycle. We've never really been a fan of it, partly because of the challenges. But this one is this idea of zero waste, where the pattern is made out of a piece of fabric and it's the way you cut it, so there is no offcuts. Their challenge was to create this workwear jacket with 4 pockets, a collar and 5 buttons with zero waste. And it had been designed in a way where, as I say, no fabric was wasted. So it was all going to be about the maths, wasn't it? That was clear right from the beginning because they had to draw the whole pattern piece out. And I've got a little picture of that here. That was the example. So that was what they were working towards. It's a nice big jacket, isn't it? There's no fit there or anything. I suppose that's an issue with zero waste patterns. But look at the pattern itself, Ting. They had to draw all that out to get it right. Now, how long was spent on that? Because if you get that wrong, you're screwed for the whole thing, aren't you?
Well, I think that's the issue. I mean, going back to the first picture you had of the packet with the pattern on the front, it says there that you need 137 centimeter fabric, must be 140 to 150 centimeters wide. And I think where we had a couple of things that had gone wrong, I think people didn't have the right size fabric, and therefore, you then started like you say, you then, because there was no pattern, it was all measurement. So it was like, well, once you've done this, you've got to do this plus a 3.5. I presume that was for seam allowance and stuff like that. You've got to do this, that, and the other. And then suddenly you're like, okay, so I'm planning it myself. So if you've got the wrong size fabric, you're just going to stretch your measurements to make it fit. Yeah. And I wonder if that's why we had some sleeves that were too long, or I know Jess actually measured her whole, she got her front and her back muddled up, which was a completely different matter. But, I think that's possibly where there was some kind of leeway for error, because you were working off the fabric you had in front of you, not this is 120, this is 30, this is 40 centimeters, and so on.
How do you feel about the actual idea of this as a pattern challenge? Because this is, when you look at drawing that out, that is classic tailor work. Tailors will be doing that with their chalk and ruler. They won't be having pattern pieces as such, will they? And drawing around pattern pieces. So was this a real classic sewing skill, or was this just something to purposely be able to go with the judging? Oh, you got your maths wrong. Oh, you got your maths wrong. Was it a production thing? What do you think?
So this is potentially where we're seeing a slipper being thrown at this rate, because I really love the idea, because for me, that Reduce, Reuse, Recycle Week, they've never, to me, got it quite right. And I don't know, it's difficult because we're now however many series in, and they always have a reduce, reuse, recycle. But a zero waste pattern, absolutely spot on. I think that is exactly what you'd expect to see in a reduce, reuse, recycle week, because that's the reduce bit. You're not actually creating the waste.
Yeah.
We can see from all those lovely designs there that even though it was the same pattern, it's all come out very well. But the slipper gets thrown because you're then giving them measurements and mathematics to do, and yet none of them had a calculator. They were all having to work it out on paper. Now, this is where it goes back. If we were sat in the shop or at home, I'd be sat here, I've had my calculator out, I'd have worked out exactly what I needed to do, I'd have measured everything 3 times before I even cut it. Whereas they had that time pressure, and that time pressure was even more so because it was cut down again. It
Oh
wasn't.
no, they got 4 hours for it. To be fair, Ting, sorry, yeah. So I think they'd given them an extra half hour to perhaps
But
balance out that math work.
but I think that was where. I mean, I know that's where you're going to get the TV and the,
Yeah.
it's not comedy, but like the errors and everything
Yes. Yeah.
come from when things are not quite
Yeah.
right. But that is a very different skill,
Yeah.
especially if you are someone who can sew extremely well, but you just use patterns. There are not many people who are confident enough to draft their own patterns or to do things freestyle, and so I just felt that was the stumbling block with this. I thought it was a
Absolutely.
brilliant idea,
Yeah.
and actually it wasn't a bad pattern because, like you say, there wasn't really a fit there, so you couldn't go that wrong
Yeah.
there. And in some respects, you should have been able to line them all up and judge them, which obviously is what happened. But that's what you get because it's such a, I say, simple pattern in itself, but the skill is the cutting and putting it together. But everyone should have produced exactly the same item, and we can see there that that's not what's happened. Just looking along that row, and I just feel that was the problem with the time on that one.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they obviously give them extra time to balance out that math work, but also it was actually, there were a lot of skills involved there. You've got the collar work, you've got the pockets, you've got the buttons as well. That it was a big. I think you messaged at one point and said, "Oh, that's a lot to do." When they showed that animation, that felt like
It wasn't just
going
it
on
wasn't
and
just
on.
two pockets, was it?
No.
It was four
Yeah.
pockets. Two of those had flaps over,
Yeah.
and then if you look down that row, you've got arms that are longer than the
Yeah.
length in Dan's. Then the grey one seems to be about the right length. Then poor old Gaynor has got an extra foot on the end of her arm. Kit seemed to be the right length. Kaz's seems to be the right length, but then Jess's are too short. If you look where they fall against Kaz's, can't really see the black one, although Allers was pretty good all over.
Yeah.
And it was the same as it. So,
Stuart.
I think that's where the fabric size came into issue as well, because you knew it was zero waste. So you kind of looking at it going, well, I shouldn't have any waste, so I'll extend this up here, or this needs to go right to the edge of the fabric. And, maybe the selvage was more on one than it was on another and stuff like that. So, I think that's where 4 hours, maybe. But I think to ask them to do all the mathematics and the drawing out rather than just cutting out pattern pieces, I think that put them under a lot of pressure, which is why you had some silly mistakes as well. Stuart put the wrong number of buttons on. He picked up 4 and then he spaced them out. No, he picked up 5 and then he put on 4 or whatever it was, but he spaced them out incorrectly. Of course, once you've done it, you can't just go and put a random one in the middle, because then it would look ridiculous. Once it's done, it's done. And again, if you're at home, you would have made sure you had everything in the right place.
I feel,
and some of them didn't even get buttons.
Well, I know, that's it. I feel they could have perhaps, and I know they won't have done this because it's filmed, it's production crew, it's money, it's a schedule and everything. But I feel they should have given them time to have done the maths, drawn it, and then cut it out, and then gone, right, that's that. You had that time limit, that's done. Have a rest now, have a cup of tea, and then we'll come back and do the sewing. But obviously, you can't do that. Let's take a look at them. We know Jess struggled right from the beginning because of the maths and the measuring out. It was, and so she was always chasing a tail, wasn't she?
And again, the trouble is, it's reduce, reuse, recycle. It's a zero waste pattern, so she couldn't just sling it all away and go, I'll start all over again, because that defeats the object of the challenge in itself anyway. But also, it took so long to draw out those pattern pieces that you couldn't just say, well, I'll start all over again, because you'd already used up probably a third of your time. And you couldn't have lost 2/3 of your time to all of that. You'd have never got it sewn together. So, I admire her tenacity to just carry on and go with what she's got. But unfortunately, you then end up with something that does not look like anything else that's there.
But the good thing about this, though, it wasn't about the sewer's ability to sew, was it? Really, this challenge was about there being the time frame and having to do the maths. And that's all it was, and being under pressure. So she can sew. She just did. It was just because of that. So that's kind of a nice thing, isn't it?
She can sew in the respect of that she looked at it and went, oh, well, it's all gone wrong. I'm going to work with what I've got. And
Yeah.
she's sewn the pockets on, and she's done the collar and everything. She's done what she could
Yeah.
with the pieces that she had. And so if she couldn't sew, she wouldn't have been able to do that. So, she deserves congratulating on that front, at least.
What did you think about Orla being brave and deciding to go for contrast top stitch thread?
I think it was a very brave move.
Wouldn't it?
I kind of wanted to scream no. I think I did at one point at the screen, because you're just like, there is so much to do here that actually the top stitching is usually the last thing you do when you're in a hurry. And if you're doing it in a contrast stitch and it goes wrong, it's really going to show. I mean, she's a good sewer again. She's someone, well, they all are, but it shows that she didn't let that pressure get to her. But it was an extra challenge she didn't need, and she gave that to herself. So, it's like we've said before, if you can show off those extra bits that make you stand out, then you're going to get noticed. And she did get noticed for that.
And then we have Kit. We're talking about Kit. We're just doing in no particular order here, just what's a good discussion point. Look at Kit, because I was going through it to tot up how many weeks people have won with everything. Kit has won the pattern challenge in week 1, week 2, and now and week 4. So he's already got 3 under his belt. So let's take a look at Kit's, because people are expecting now him to keep knocking it out of the park. Look at the fabric he chose.
Yeah,
not your cup of tea.
I didn't. No, I didn't like it, and I think because we're told that it's a jacket, and this to me is giving off shirt vibes.
It is, compared to.
And I don't know if that was also because the fabric was it a bit too drapey.
Yeah.
I liked the idea that he went against, he bucked against the trend, because everyone else pretty much went with a solid fabric and a thicker fabric.
Yeah.
But to me, that gave off more of a shirt, especially because the pattern was actually called a work jacket, wasn't it? And you could see all of those others being, in a work environment, in a warehouse or something like that, with the way it's buttoned up and everything. Whereas that one, it's a nice fabric, but it just gave off the wrong vibe for me. But that's a fabric choice thing. From a sewing point of view, like you said, he's won those pattern challenges on a number of times, and this was sewn very well as well. But if Esme can change her mind about just because something's a different colour, then so can I, can't I? I didn't like the fabric on it. That was the only thing.
What was interesting to watch throughout the edit of the pattern challenge was he just seemed to be like, because when it started, he was like, I was right. So they'd obviously been chatting, it's reduce, reuse, recycle week. I reckon it's going to be a zero waste pattern. So that's obviously what he was saying. So he came across as really confident, and it was like he's done these millions of times before. I cannot believe how calm and, you just do this, you just do this, you just do that. It's quite incredible.
From this point of view, for this challenge, with the mathematical element to it, as he said, he's got some sort of, whether it's a degree in mathematics or it's part of his degree. If he's done maths to degree level, then he can sit there and work that maths out like that. And if you've got that mathematical, logical brain, which I feel, as we learn more about him, I think that is clearly how he operates. And, you will find certain jobs easier if you've got that mathematical approach. And this was perfect for him, because he probably didn't spend as long as the others, because it probably just made sense reading those instructions and just going bang, 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 bang. So, that's where having those different skill sets, comes in.
And let's look at another one who was always sort of in the top, either winning or first or second, was Kaz, but she had issues. This was the pink one right in the middle there, with the button just being...
Well, she turned it into a shirt, didn't she? Because it should have been done up at the collar. The button should have been at the top. And then, again, that gives off more of a shirt vibe. It's either got to be like a blazer and have it down just below the breastbone, or this pattern required you to have it done up at the top. So,
but look at the crispness of that collar, everyone. I mean, that just looks great, doesn't it? And then let's have a close-up look of Dan's as well while we're here. There. Who did struggle with the buttons as well. I think that was the only thing that he perhaps didn't get to do.
Yeah.
But that 5 buttons is hard. Can you remember week 1 last year, the skirt that had like 12 buttons or whatever?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
you can't just knock them out in a few seconds, can you? Right, so let's look at the running order with that. So Kit was first, and Orla was second. And then down at the other end, you had Gaynor, who was 7th, because of the sleeve issue. And I can't remember if Gaynor didn't get any buttons on either. And then
No, she didn't.
And then Jess, where's Jess? Here, 8th, there. So that's where we are with the pattern challenge standings. Let's go into the transformation challenge. And there is the end results. But what did they have to do first? And let's do that. They had tents. They walked in to see all these tents there, and their brief was to create an outfit for a festival of their choice. Like, I didn't understand that really, Tiggs. Like, festivals, they're festivals are festivals. There's not really. What happens if? Would you have said a really different festival to me?
No, and also if you're going to a festival, you take your tent with you. You don't get halfway through the festival and go, "Oh, I know what? Let me rip up my tent that I'm sleeping in at the moment and turn it into a dress." Again, if you want another slipper, this is where it's coming in, because it was ridiculous in that respect to frame it that way.
Yes,
but also to turn around and say, well, yeah, because that's what you do with manky, stinky old tent fabric that, you've rolled up when you come back from camping and it's been sat in the cupboard under the stairs and it all mildewy, and you go, oh, I know what would be a really good idea if I turn that into a frock. These challenges every week are ridiculous, but for this, well, it was just another.
Well, it was. They've been doing so well, haven't they, over these last 4 weeks? But you kind of know with reduce, reuse, recycle, it is still going to be.
Well, it's just amplified even more in this week, because every one of these is a reduce, reuse, recycle challenge, because you're always recycling something into something else.
Yeah.
So you could argue that you've shot yourself in the foot because you basically do this every single week. So what the hell do you do in reduce, reuse, recycle week? That's that, And I suppose there is the statistic about how many tents get left behind at festivals and that. But again, who's going around going, oh, at the end of Glastonbury, all those tents, we'll have those and we'll turn them into frocks. I think they take them down and send them off to help homeless people and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't know if turning them into a frock. The other thing I and this might be me not paying attention, because last night I suddenly remembered I needed to book my haircut. So I was trying to book my hair appointment while this was on. And I didn't feel that it was clear that they needed to use a lot of the fastenings. I thought the general instruction was that you just had to use the tent and you could use the fastenings because you weren't allowed anything from the haberdashery. But there was no real emphasis on that. Yet the minute we cut to Patrick, he's like, I want to see all of these included. And I was like, was that clear? Because some of these, they had made use of it, but others had not really made that much use of them. And I felt, well, it would have been very easy to put them in. And I don't know if that was clear. So, that's potentially another.
Well, I'll give you what they said, because this is how it was worded from Esme. You need to think of how you will use the different elements of the tent to create something fun and wearable. But it was the bit where at the beginning, think of how you will use the different elements. Well, I thunk about how to, but I didn't use it. You could say that, can't you?
Also, but what does she mean by elements? Because that could be anything. That could be the fact that you have different colours of fabric often on a tent. It could be that the ground sheet is a different weight to the thing. It isn't
The
clear. It should
mesh.
be the toggles and the ties
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the D rings and everything
yeah.
like that. Elements is such a vague word. So
Agree.
yeah, you can sling another slipper at that if you want. Let's
well,
catch up for the series.
well, well, there we go. So they're the end results. Think of how you'll use the different elements of the tent to create something fun and wearable. Something fun. Which ones there would you say are fun? That's a very objective
Well,
word, isn't it?
in light of everything I've just said, I actually liked pretty much all of
Yeah.
them. Um, I like the way that they try to use various elements of it. I I mean, I could pick away at little bits of, I think, everyone's. Jess's, I didn't really understand. I don't think the puffball skirt worked that well.
Yeah.
Um, and Kit, I didn't like, while I appreciated what they said about, oh, you've used the no cooking thing to cover your nipple area, he hadn't really got anything on the other side.
No.
And I felt that was a bit too revealing if we're going to go, because he'd used the mesh, which you'd class as an element. But I just felt that there was another way he could have made that a bit more modest under there. And I didn't really like the hood thing that was on Gainer's one.
Yes.
But I loved the suspenders on Aula's. I loved Dan's chaps and cape and everything. That was it was camp as a row of tents.
It was, wasn't it? Let's have a look at.
And despite what I say about Kit's top, I liked like the puffball of Kit's skirt as well. The only one that I didn't really go for, which then shocked me in the judging, is Kaz's. I didn't know if it did enough. It looked quite. I like the wine pocket as they referred to it on the front, although I feel that might have just pulled the whole dress off you. But I don't know if it was just, I mean, Esme said it needed a bit of a contrast colour, but then it was between Kaz and Dan when it came down to the final judging.
Well, I was angry at that point when Esme said, oh, it's grey. Don't really like grey. It needed a contrast colour.
They gave her a grey 10.
Well, exactly. And I can prove this because I then went back to find it. And there is Kaz's grey 10. She's only got two colours to play with, light grey and dark grey. And she put that dark grey on the side bits, didn't she? There, look.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't use that, can you, in judging? You've got to know. Or the production the production crew should have prepped them all and said, right, Kaz did have a grey tent only, so you can't comment on colour there because she only had the grey tent. But I suppose she could have gone to Dan and said, can I nick some of your material, maybe?
Well, they were told they only could use one tent.
Oh,
so again,
well, they are.
You pick that up and then you are stuck with what you've got. Now, I, again, still wasn't really paying much attention because it's reduce, reuse, recycle week. But I presume they brought in, 8 tents? I can't imagine there was like 15 for you to choose from. So there's an element of like going, well, that's the only one that I had anyway. Yeah,
there were just two of them. And most of the tents are that two-colour contrast, but there isn't much there, is there, really? I suppose you've got the door, you've got that one there, it's lime, navy and black. But yes, I was like fuming at that bit. But I think the rest of the nation, when they saw Dan and his chaps, I think they just went like I did, oh, he's got it, he's got to have it.
Yeah.
Because it's just brilliant, isn't it? That is fun and wearable. Because I'd be running around pretending to be Wonder Woman, no, Superman, Batman.
But even with the cape there, he's cut it so he's got that V, which was all within the tent, the way it was sewn together anyway. So in that cape, he didn't really have to work on that bit. It was a very easy way to make use of what you had in front of you. So he could spend the time on the main outfit.
Yeah. But how many elements there? And that's probably what they should have done. They should have said, you need to use 3 elements from the tent. So strings, some clips and whatever. But he's used them all there. And then this bit, I like this bit. Where is it? And then Esme was saying, oh, you can pull it up and flash. Some cheek. It was a great make. So, I think that will go down really well. And I like Stuart's though too, actually. At first when I saw his, I was like, oh yes, I want that. How do I get rid of these? I've got so many buttons now. I like the colours of Stuart's and that sort of sort of patchwork design on the front. I thought that was really clever.
I did, but I know they only have 90 minutes to do this challenge anyway. But about halfway through, I really liked what he had. And then when it got to the end, I think he'd gone beyond it and he'd put too much on. I feel that if he'd have not stopped, but if he'd have worked on refining what he had about halfway through, I think I would have liked that more. I felt it lost some shape and definition by the time it got to the end. And that's the trouble because A, you're doing it quickly, and B, you're going, well, I need to put this on, I need to put that on, I need to do this. And then you go a bit too far and you overwork it, I suppose.
And then let's not forget Yasmin's too. I thought that was really clever, especially with the front.
Again, she made good use of what she had.
The mesh there, the different colours.
And that's similar to what I was saying about Kit's one. You know, she obviously thought about this needs to be a bit more modest under this, you know, see-through mesh fabric. And I just felt that, you know, Kit had only put that on the one side of his. And I just felt that needed a bit more to it.
Okay, so Dan came first and Kaz second. I think had she had a two-tone tent, that would have. Do you think that would have pipped it?
It could have done, but you know, you still make design choices. She did have some dark grey and black there, so you know, maybe she should have gone with a black top, maybe.
And Stuart seventh, which I thought, no, that can't be that low. But there we are. And then Jess eighth. So now we go into the last round, and Jess is bottom twice. So she knows it. She knows she's got to pull something special out of the bag. And then it could be either way with anyone else. It could have been Stuart. It could have been Gaynor, who was seventh. So the pressure was on her for sure. I can't imagine that pressure. Can you? If that was you, Ting? Well,
no, because obviously, I mean, I'm assuming that the first two are recorded one day because they have longer to do the other one the next day. So, you know, you very clearly had a bad day in both challenges. And then you have to get up the next morning and come in and go, well, I really have to do this because yesterday was a shocker. And we've seen that in previous series as well, you know, where someone's had a bad day and then and I mean, even poor Novello last week, she suffered a similar issues that she'd struggled in the first two challenges. And then you go in to the last challenge knowing you have to do well. And so the minute things start to not go as well, they kind of snowball a bit.
When you got to this stage now last night as we were watching it, what were you thinking about the made to measure? Did you have any ideas of what they could be doing? Or were you thinking, oh, I hope they don't do this?
Well, it's the thing with this week again. There's not much you can do because for the made to measure, it's simply got to be made to fit the model that you've got sat in front of you. So you can then say, well, you can do whatever you want. And that's essentially what they've done. But this year they got them to choose clothes that they already owned. So they weren't going out and buying new things or new fabrics. Whereas I think in the past they've done similar things where they've had to use bed sheets or curtains or anything, which is a little bit more, you know, this is where I struggle with this week because sometimes the challenges are ridiculous. But as we saw, which we've not mentioned from our bit with Amber halfway through, reduce, reuse, recycle is all stemming from that make, do and mend era. And therefore, that's exactly what we should be doing. We should be reusing and recycling, but it never seems to come across very well in this program. That's what we're doing. And to a certain degree, that's what the third challenge did, because it was what have you got in your wardrobe that you can repurpose, which is exactly that, you know, wartime spirit of rationing and, you know, just making do with what you've got and looking at that. So part of me wants to lean into it because of that. But then this is a competition where you have now just flung the wardrobe open and said, do whatever you like. So how do you then judge that?
Well,
how do you compare apples and pears? Because that's what we're now doing. We're not comparing apples with apples when everyone is doing something completely different. The only common thread is that these were clothes at the back of your wardrobe.
And that's what we were... I know I was throwing slippers out most of the time in our chat. So the brief was to be inspired by... Well, we already hate those anyway, don't we? Because that's judging that. Okay. There we are. To be inspired by the wartime campaign Make, Do and Mend They were asked to raid wardrobes and charity shops to make a brand new outfit suitable for a family occasion. But it didn't just end up being that, did it, Ting? It ended up becoming who can tell, or it wasn't even who can tell the best backstory. It was about the backstories. And I don't know how you can stop the judges being influenced by that. Did they even need to know the backstories? Why were the backstories so important? Well, they were important because it was going to make good telly, wasn't it? Which it did in that respect. Some of those stories were beautiful, weren't they?
Well, it was important because I say to create an even playing field, but it wasn't an even playing field. But, to create that even playing field, you had to justify why you had whatever you had in front of you, whether it was your dad's old shirts or the family's pajamas or your old dresses that you went on a cruise with. You had to justify why you had it. But then you're right. How much was it then leaning into the sob story behind this? And was it sentimental, or how sentimental that was? And, how important was that garment? And how important was it that you didn't mess this up because this was, fabric that held a memory and everything like that. And rather than going, well, you all got to make a dress or an A-line dress or something, because you opened it up to make whatever you want as well. I just feel that we were then going, well, how important was that story, and how important does that what you've said is then produced, which is fine, but then how do you compare that to the next contestant next to them, and the contestant next to them, and the contestant next to them?
Because no matter what size that inspiration is, it's still going to be incredibly powerful. And also, in a way, and this is making a good one for the judges, really, because it stops there. It's difficult for them. It's putting the judges in a really awkward position, because you don't want to lesser the value of his story compared to her story, but you feel that one's a bigger story because it's huge. So it's putting them in an awkward position to judge, I felt.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
But I can understand why, for television and for us, we want to hear the story of that. But should they have not? Should they have just said, I've got my mum's jacket and my dad's skirt or whatever, and then...
I don't necessarily... I mean, it's an issue that comes up in this, when you've got this sort of challenge, but it was then combining it with you can make whatever you like. Whereas I feel if they'd all been told they had to make the same thing...
Yes.
Then it comes down to, well, what then you can focus on the story, because then you can actually then say, right, well, they've all had these separate individual stories, but they've all made this outfit, and I can compare
this one is the best.
This.
Yes, like you said, apples and pears. Yeah, right. Let's have a look at them all then. Let's go through, made to measure in no particular order, just the way they come up on my screen. Yasmin first. Yasmin was a play suit to wear to her engagement party, and it was originally a summer dress where she was on holiday with it, and satin trousers found in a charity shop. Good old Go Days again. Beautiful. Nice make, isn't it?
I mean, and it's a nice make. Don't get me wrong, Go Days are difficult to put into there anyway, but there's work there to do, but it wasn't the most complicated sewing that you could do. That's not a problem, because remember, we've said you can do something relatively simplistic, but if you do, it has to be done perfectly. And, in that respect, her seams were wonderful and everything else like that. You then have to say, well, how much does this show off your sewing ability if it's a relatively straightforward pattern?
Yeah. Stuart, next on the screen, he was going to make a menswear summer party outfit. He originally had a woolen jacket from a charity shop, and then his dad's work shirt. I thought
I love this.
Genius again. Absolutely genius in every way. What he's reused, but the style. We've got that knot again, that wonderful keyhole in the middle. He is very much a very, very clever engineer and architect. He can see this, and let me show you the back, everyone. Isn't that just ingenious?
Yeah. I really liked it, and I know that they're there to pick holes in things, but like Esme said, you need another button on the thing here. Well, it doesn't need another button because it then wouldn't look like a shirt. But
Yeah.
all you needed to do was actually just sew the front down.
Yeah.
It didn't need to open at the front because he put the darts and the zips and everywhere else. So I think if he'd have just sewn down the front, then it wouldn't have gapped like it did. And it was only a small gap because of the way he turned a jacket into a skirt. It was coming about because of that, because it was never meant to be cut into a skirt. So I think that would have been an easy fix. And, you know, when he gets this outfit back, that is an easy fix. You just
Yeah.
would sew down there. You wouldn't worry about putting another button on.
Then we've got Orla, which was a green and red Christmas, a Kaylee dress that she was going to create. Originally, it was a crushed velvet skirt. Her aunt, who passed away, she'd inherited it. And then also green velvet fabric her mum got from a charity shop.
Yeah, it was a nice dress.
It was. I don't know whether it seemed to work with that T-shirt underneath. I just thought that was an interesting choice of colour as well.
I don't really understand because they kind of whipped through these a bit more faster,
they
and
did.
I didn't really understand where that bit came from. But you know, overall, again, it's a relatively straightforward sew, and she's a good sewer, so it's come out, you know, a very good, well to put together piece.
Yeah. And then we had Kit, who was similar to Kaz with denim. So we have, let's do a couple of denims together. Kit was making a skater dress from a pile of his friend's jeans. And you texted me straight away. I think we both said it at the same time as we were texting. Go on, Ting, you tell the story.
Well, I'm not going to tell the story.
It just looked, well, it just went, oh, that's what Ralph?
Yeah,
Rafe
yeah.
did a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Not that matters, but it's like, oh,
no, it's a difficult one because, again, there's only so much you can do. And, you know, denim, as we can see from this, you can get all those different shades. And it wasn't exactly the same, you know, it was just that Rafts also fell on the reduce, reuse, recycle because it was all about doing that and recycling and saving the whales and everything else like that. It didn't help for those of you that do follow the Facebook group and the Instagram channel for the official Sewing Bee that they put out Rafe's video on
really?
Monday, Tuesday. Where it went up as a post as one of the ones of stuff from Reduce, Reuse, Recycle Week. They put up a couple of people's, and they've been doing that, you know, before the shows. They've put up previous contestants, going all the way back to Joe Lycett hosting and everything like that. But I don't know how much of that is a production thing because, I mean, I think I probably would have remembered it, but I had literally seen that the day before when they showed the whole of Rafe Sew on the Facebook or the Instagram channel, whichever one it was. So then, of course, you just then make that comparison to it. And I don't know if that was very fair to Kit.
Absolutely.
Or whether Kit needed to be a little bit more, you know, different. I mean, it is different. It's not the same as Raf's, but it was ringing too many bells that you then think, well, it wasn't as an original idea as perhaps you'd hoped, although it is, you know, it's not obviously exactly the same.
Yeah, I hadn't seen any of those, but we all remember Raf because we were just loving him anyway in his makes, and that was a stunning make, and it was like, and it just, But look at it. I mean, look at that symmetry.
The way he's used all the elements and the seams and everything.
Jeez.
Yeah, you know, again, you can't fault the sewing at all.
No, absolutely incredible. Then we had Jess, who was doing a summer barbecue dress. Now, a lot of pressure was on her, remember, being bottom in the first two rounds. It was developing beautifully. Look at that. It was lab coats and garments that her mum wore to work because she was a dental hygienist before she got sick. So she wanted to use the lab coat and the lab buttons and everything. I loved that red print fabric with the white. Very clever. And the solid red.
Yep.
Beautiful make of reusing a lab coat and workwear. That is wonderful. Lovely piece. And then we've got Gaynor. She wanted to make a waistcoat and a skirt for a family meal dress. Originally, it was an old gold black dress, which I think did she say she was on a cruise with? And then the other dress, the black dress that she made years ago when she went to Norway. And that's nice. That little bit at the bottom does connect it. I still feel there was something a bit missing here. I felt that the model was a bit naked, lots on show. Is that just me?
I think it's just you. I think, she wanted to make that waistcoat. It was always going to look like that. She decided to put ties on instead of buttons, which I do think, I agree with Esme, that worked better, brought it together better. I quite liked it. I liked the way that she'd made good use of the two dresses together and managed to tie them together with that flash across the skirt at the front.
And then we had Dan, that's his skirt, and then the long shot, here we go. Dan, he had a big Christmas do with his family. So they had all these pajamas and T-shirts, 13 of them. And so that was the origin of that. So the print he cut up to make the fabric, and then the back of the T-shirt, the black, was the skirt. Clever make.
I think it's a good one. Although, I mean, pretty much everyone did this, but he had to make the fabric before he could use the fabric. So look at all of that patchwork and everything beautiful. There. He had to make that fabric before he could even turn it into what he wanted it to be, which is the same. Kit would have had to do the same. He's had to make the fabric to do that. Not that others didn't do that, but others sewed bits together in panels where he had to make that before he could turn it into the panel that he wanted to insert into the dress. And that took time. But at the same time, where I started to panic, he was going to run out, but you can never tell with these shows because of the way it's put together. Yeah. But I was worried that he was going to run out of time. But then he managed to pull that skirt together. And I think that was a lot easier because obviously it was purely black from the back of the pajamas. So he didn't have to worry about all of the gold that he'd got on the top there.
But a great make. Look at that. The binding on the edge there. You can see his sewing. Brilliant. Yeah. Kaz, again, we just talked about her with making fabric out of denim. Kaz making a fabric out of her husband's jeans. 5 pairs she had. This was going to be her 60th birthday jumpsuit. And she said she practiced. That's the first time I'd heard that properly from some of the contestants. She practiced.
It's an interesting one.
It took 5 hours.
How do you practice when you're supposed to be recycling? So she must have gone and bought 5 pairs of jeans from somewhere to at least have a go at it. But good on her for doing that, because it used so many different elements from the jeans in the wrong places. Like the waistband was around the top here. She's got these pockets and everything. So by practicing it, she knew what she wanted it to look like. And, if she wants to wear it in the future, then practicing it means that she's going to, hopefully have made it so it lasts.
See, now to me, this would have been a perfect made to measure. You've got jeans, make a garment out of it. Because you could have done loads of different things. But actually, we at home could do that, couldn't we? Let's get all the jeans, sew it all together, make your fabric, and then cut out and make something new. Would have been easier to have assessed as well, all across the board.
Yeah.
I think that's everyone. That's everyone. So when you look at that, right, so this is where we get in, and I'll just quickly try and show all the eight together. You can now, we were just saying, weren't we? How on earth are you going to mark that and assess that? Because they're all so different inspirations, aren't they?
Yeah. And I think, that's what made this difficult, because there was no standard pattern or shape or whatever. So you completely, it's a bit like this. It's making my mind melt.
Sorry. Yeah.
What you tried to do.
I tried to get everyone's on there, but failing abysmally.
You should have worked on that before we came on air.
I know.
I thought I was having a stroke.
I just had the idea. But I felt for the judges here, because they might have gone, that's brilliant, but her backstory is so beautiful. And I just felt for them there. I thought that was really hard. Because how do you choose?
Well, it was difficult to pick, and if you go back to Jess having had a bad day the day before, they then picked a few more holes in what she'd done today. She'd left a raw edge that did look untidy on that kind of, well, I don't know if you can call it peplum because it wasn't very big, but so then you can start to pick away at certain things. But then her backstory was, was really good, and you
Yeah,
felt for her in that respect.
absolutely.
So it was difficult, but then they made it difficult for the judges
Yeah,
by creating a
yeah.
challenge that was worded in the way that it was.
Whose was your favourite? That made to measure.
Um, I did. I did like Dan's because I thought it looked very neat, but then I think that's quite easy to do with the black fabric as
Yeah,
well because it hides a multitude. Um, I liked Kaz's for the way that she'd used all those different elements as well. Um, I think the amount of work that went into those two.
yeah,
I'm not saying that there wasn't in the others, but like I said, a couple of those were relatively straightforward patterns. Whereas there was a lot of work had to go into making those fabrics for both
yeah,
Kaz and Dan and Kit's there as well before you could even get started on the actual
yeah.
garment that you wanted.
Mine still was Stuart's. There was just so much there. There was that engineering. You've got these two old garments that
Yeah,
almost opposing against each other. There would just seem to be more things that perhaps tick that criteria from a sewing point of view,
yeah.
regardless of the backstory.
I think also his design he had to design that with that in mind. Whereas the others, even with Kit, you could make Kit's dress out of a
Yes,
flat fabric.
yes, yeah,
Although Kit's very good at drafting his own patterns. Whereas this, you've actually got to stop and think, I want the sleeves to do this. I
yes,
want the
yeah.
jacket to do that. It needs to be darted here, there. I just feel that required a different set of sewing and thinking skills than creating a bit of fabric that you can then essentially put any pattern on
It
and cut out.
And is it also because it still looks like the original? So I know that's not part of the
Yeah,
brief, but some of
you can
them
still
are
pick
so
that
far
out.
removed from the original you would never have known.
Yeah,
Like Dan's with the Christmas tree at the Christmas top. Whereas this, you're like, oh, it's shirt. Oh, it's a jacket. I don't know
yeah.
whether that should have got more brownie points or whether that should. Well, I don't know because it should have been part of the criteria maybe, but it wasn't. But should it have been?
Well, we'll never know.
Well, oh, okay. So there we go. We pretty much then now thought it is going to be Jess, isn't it? To that raw edge on the
I
front probably meant it
I
was going
could
to be her.
understand why Gaynor was worried because she'd had a few stumbles along the way. But I think that the bad day, the day before for Jess,
Yeah.
she only had to do a few things a bit off, which she did. Not massive things, but that was enough to say, well, she had a bad day yesterday and she's got a couple of things off. So,
Yeah. We had to say goodbye to Jess.
unfortunately,
Before we say goodbye to Jess, though, I just want to say, Jess, if you're watching, I still love this outfit that you wore a couple of weeks ago. And I wanted to talk about it a couple of weeks ago, but I completely forgot. Ting, Jess's look here. There is. I just
yeah,
think
but you love a sailor outfit, you do.
when I saw it for the first time when the episode started, it's like, Jess, you look fabulous. What a look. Who else could pull that off without looking sailorish, but looking cool? I think she just looked fabulous there. So I just wanted to say that. I'll be
Yeah.
gutted to not be able to see what else she wears for the rest of the season. Garment of the week. It pretty much was probably going to be Dan. I
I,
felt that. Did you think?
well, I wanted it to be Dan just because
Yes.
he'd had a good week.
Yeah.
But then equally, I thought Kaz was going to take it again. I thought the work that had gone into that and all the elements of the jeans that had been used in various different ways, I thought that might tip it in her favour. But I think the work that he put
Yeah.
into that black and gold panel on the front is what they've looked at and gone, yeah, that is not easy. Because also it's made out of pajamas, which again is jersey material,
Yeah.
which is not easy to work with. Not that denim isn't hard, but to get that looking how he wanted it to look, I think that's probably what they've taken into consideration there. And so I was really pleased for him.
Well, yeah, when you look at that, let's find that close up again of it. Dan, where is it? Dan Close. I've got to find the right one. There it is. Me labelling the pictures. Oh, it's small, isn't it? But look at that. It is, as patchwork as me and you are. Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those seam lines. So, yeah. And we were talking about Dan last week, weren't we? And many people in the chat are going, I love Dan's personality. He's just oozing. I don't know what it is. You want to chat with him. You want to sit with him. You want to have a giggle with him.
Yeah.
And it's coming across brilliantly. And I think he is developing a big fan base for sure. So we're halfway through season now, Ting. Are you, what do you call it? Pulling, what is it? Hammering? No. What do you fly your flag? No, you don't fly your flag. You're nailing what do you nail? Your nails. Well, that's probably for a different type of show.
You nail your colours to the mast.
That's
maybe?
it. I knew it was something sailorish and pirate-ish.
We won't talk about anything else I might nail. Well, I think we said at the start here that even this week with Jess going, it was so difficult to judge.
Yeah.
I still feel it could go any way, and there's nothing that's making me go, oh, I don't like that person, or I don't want that person to win. I think they are all brilliant sewers. I think, we've grown to love what Kaz is doing, and we've got Dan's personality there, and that goes back to how much you let your heart rule against who's good at sewing. And, Kit's very good at sewing, Gayna's very good at sewing, Orla's very good at sewing. They're all really good at sewing.
Absolutely.
So I still think it's a really difficult one to call at this stage. No one shot ahead like we've perhaps had in previous series where one or two of them you've just gone, they're knocking it out of the park every single week.
Absolutely.
Although Kit, is doing well.
but the others are all equally high. Sometimes you have two people that are miles in the front. You go, those two are going to be in the final for sure. Any of these could be in the final, and it would be a stunning final. Couldn't it? And I know some years before we've gone, I don't want him in the final, because we get so protective because we want certain people in the final because you want to see your favourites. They're also good. I want to see them all in. So it's good. It just shows you.
It'd go on for days if they were all in the final.
It just shows you how good a series this is this year, and how exciting the next 3 weeks are going to be, with who's going to get to those top positions. But as I say, at the moment, I'd be happy with whoever it is. But still want Dan, still want Kaz, still want Stuart. I think that's my 3. I think I've got my 3 now. My final.
Oh, have you? No, you can't not have Orla, surely.
I think that'd be the quarterfinal then. Orla, Dan, Kaz, and Stuart.
What? And you don't see, but then I can sit here and go, so what? You don't think Kit will make it to the quarterfinals?
Oh God, no, I don't know. Let us know what you think will be at this midway stage, because it will be great to, in 5 weeks' time, look back and go, who's called it? So pop it in the chat. Just for fun, obviously. You don't feel, if you don't want to, don't worry. But it would be fun to go back and look on it. Thanks, Sting, for another week. It's your favourite week next week, isn't it? Your second favourite week?
They've put the two together, haven't they? Kids
Week it is.
Perhaps we can get some more of these.
I know. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4 slippers. I think everyone's loving it. I can already see the comments. It will be yay to slippers, yay to slippers. Oh, great one. Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye. Bye.